Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert on the economy to tell their stories and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as to discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. Today on the program, we are going to discuss the rise and importance of independent media. This is especially true in Canada, where we have a mainstream media that increasingly has one worldview and is heavily funded by the Canadian federal government. During the COVID-19 pandemic and recent truckers' convoy, it was independent media that provided a completely different story than you saw in the mainstream media. Joining us to discuss today is Kevin Vallier, founder of the Niagara Independent. Welcome to the program, Kevin.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me.
So, Kevin, tell us how you established your paper.
Well, it was one of those things where, and probably like many communities, print media in Niagara became basically a monopoly owned by Torstar. And they had the 3 daily papers, and they had the weekly papers as well. And what I sort of just kept hearing in the community was that there's this need for a second sober thought, if you will, and a need for another media to share a different voice, a strong independent news outlet that, just tells the story and doesn't have a left or right bias. I would say that a lot of the business community wanted sort of, if you will, a pro-business look, because they found as business owners, a very negative sort of connotation in a lot of the stories. And down here in Niagara, of course, is big tourism sector. It was almost frowned upon by local media. And so that's kind of how it started. And the more I talked to people, then we got some advertisers and some people that wanted to support it, a great team of writers, including one that you'll have on your show shortly. And yeah, it just sort of took off. I really had no expectations, but we wanted to be professional and balanced, great content, consistent, comes out twice a week, and now 3 times a week with a sort of a roundup of local news stories. And, here we are about 3 years later and still going.
So, great idea. We absolutely need more voices. We're seeing a media that doesn't provide both sides of the story. Certainly, we're getting away from just reporting the news. But how do you decide, I'm going to do this? Like, what is your first steps when you decided that you were going to start Niagara Independent?
I think it was, like any entrepreneur, which is outside of my wheelhouse, I admit, but there was just a strong need for another voice. And so, with a young family, it's tough to take that leap on my own. But like I said, with supporters and advertisers, we were able to get some financial backing and just launch it and move forward with it. And it kind of kept going, and it kept growing, and the number of subscribers and the feedback was great. And of course, out of the gate, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there was some pushback. That people saw it leaning a little bit conservative. And so, there's almost a push to kind of shut it down right out of the gate because people didn't want that other voice in their community.
Yeah, and certainly we see very one-sided media in this country. So hats off to you. We have about a minute left. I'd love to hear about your background and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So, excuse me. My background is in public relations, about 20 years. So I've kind of been on, for me to flip to the media side was interesting. But I've dealt with reporters, my entire career. And I have, I'm a fan of media. And, in my PR days, I got to the office and would grab the paper and read the paper first thing in the morning, look for stories on, whatever company I was working with. And it was great. And I don't want to see mainstream media die, but I think the pendulum has swung so far the other way that there needs to be a course correction. So now I've seen kind of both sides of the tape on the PR side and the media side.
Well, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to bring one of your major contributors and hear about her story and her views on independent media. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Canadian Innovators.